Silver shimmered turbulently, and without thinking, Shilian's first reaction was to block with his hand. Roya, on his arm, would attack automatically if the situation called for it. Yet, those silver butterflies never charged toward him, and instead flew around him to attack the two behind who were fist-fighting just moments ago. Fengxin and Mu Qing, who had suffered before at the hands of those wraith butterflies, knew how powerful they were and didn't dare to be careless. They both raised their hands at the same time and cried, "Shield!" Millions of silver butterflies jetted toward them, flapping their wings like blasting winds, but there was an invisible wall blocking them, and the butterflies smashed against it like a thunderstorm, hailing and battering. White lights flared from the friction like sparks. It appeared that the two had cast a spell to shield. But even against a magical shield, the wraith butterflies were forceful and endless, crazy like a moth to a flame. Even with the spiritual defense, the two seemed to be pushed back by the relentless deluge of butterflies. A moment of carelessness, and the enemy took the upper hand. If they didn't release the shield, the butterflies would push closer. If they did, there'd still be no chance for them to grab for their weapons. Both Fengxin and Mu Qing mentally swore, gritting their teeth to hang on. Fengxin took a glance and saw that Shilian was still standing where he was, with his head lowered, and shouted to him, "Your Highness, don't stand there. Come behind the shield." Yet, when Shilian turned his head, not a single hair was harmed. He frowned. Huh? The two looked closely and almost spat blood from angry shock on the spot. Shilian had in his hand a wraith butterfly, looking rather confused. Earlier, when the butterflies were gusting through like wild winds, there was one that was a little slow and couldn't follow. It had flapped with difficulty in front of Shilian. He thought it worked really hard, but the poor little silver butterfly couldn't fly anymore. So he extended his palm just beneath it. That silver butterfly had landed on his palm, wings still flapping, but refusing to leave. Both Fengxin and Mu Qing popped veins. "Don't touch that thing with your hand." Just then, Shilian felt a tightening on his wrist. Someone had gotten hold of him and pulled hard. His entire person was pulled into the darkness beyond the door. Yet, although he was shrouded in the dark, he didn't feel any alarm or insecurity. This darkness was like a layer of gentle armor. Not only did he not sense danger, it actually somehow calmed him down. Even if the person behind the darkness hadn't shown himself, with the silver butterflies, would it be hard to guess who it was? Mu Qing cried in disbelief. What impudence, to come all the way to the heavenly court. What arrogance. A voice laughed. We're all the same. Wasn't the upper court impudent in my territory? Even if Shilian already knew who it was that had grabbed him, hearing the familiar voice from so close, he was still a little startled. Fengxin shouted, "Hua Cheng, the heavenly martial emperor, is here in the heavenly court. You let Shilian go." Hua Cheng clicked his tongue. "Then let's see if you have the skill." As he finished his words, the giant doors closed heavily with a bang. Shilian could feel Hua Cheng holding him tightly with one hand, taking him back to an unknown destination. It was black all around them, and the silver bells on the black boots clinged and clanged in his ears. The ground beneath their feet was uneven. It really wasn't the bright, glorious roads of heaven, but more so a wild valley. Hua Cheng must have used the distance-shortening array to connect the front gates of the palace of Shanle to some valley. But to connect the heavenly court to somewhere else using the distance-shortening array was no easy feat. At least, only a handful of heavenly officials could do it. So how had he done it? Shilian was about to speak when a voice exploded in his ear. Your Highness, where are you? The angry roar came from Feng Xin. His voice was in Shi Lian's ear, but his person was not. It was all shouted within the communication array. Shi Lian's eardrums hurt from the noise, and many of the heavenly officials were also blasted out, asking questions in fright. What's going on, General Nanyang? Did something happen? Mu Cheng entered the communication array too. Bad news. Where's Lingwen? Report to the Emperor. Shi Lian's escaped. He usually spoke gently and courteously, but now his voice was laced with worry and anxiety. Lingwen reacted immediately. What? I'll go to the palace of Shanle to take a look. An official cried in shock. The laugh, His Royal Highness ran away? Wasn't he detained in the palace of Shanle? Shi Qingshuan entered the communication array. I just saw a bunch of middle court martial officials guarding the palace. You can only enter, but not leave. So how could he escape? Feng Xin shouted. He didn't run away. He was kidnapped. Your Highness, can you still hear us speak? Where are you right now? In that moment, everyone spoke, and they all talked loudly, each asking for answers. The mess of the Guoshe Feng Xin and Lang Chenchou hadn't even been cleared yet. Jinwu had detained Shi Lian, but the person in question was gone. Wasn't this starting more problems and gossip? Either way, they must find the person first. So Lingwen rushed to check on the situation to see if she could locate Shi Lian. Feng Xin and Mu Cheng were yelling within the communication array, looking for skilled martial guards to give chase. And Shi Qingshuan released many more waves of merits. The communication array was in complete chaos, loud and tumultuous, to the point where Shi Lian couldn't even get a word in. He took a deep breath and was about to tell everyone to calm down, when Hua Cheng suddenly turned around and brought 2 fingers forward. Those cold digits gently touched his temple, and Hua Cheng laughed. Long time no see. How's everyone doing? With the soft touch of his 2 fingers, Hua Cheng had entered the heavenly communication array through Shi Lian. His casual greeting was heard not just by Shi Lian, but by all the heavenly officials hustling within the communication array, and they all fell into a dead silence. There was a silent uproar in everyone's mind. No wonder such arrogance could only come from that person. Hua Cheng continued, I don't know if you all missed me, but I haven't thought about any of you at all. There were indeed many heavenly officials in the heavens who secretly thought about him every day. But hearing that Hua Cheng didn't think about them at all, they all chanted heavenly blessings. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Please continue to never think of us. Then Hua Cheng snickered. However, I've been fairly free recently. If anyone is feeling bored and wants to tussle with me, by all means, they're welcome to. Under the circumstances, his intent was more than obvious. If anyone is brave enough to give chase, I'll challenge them. It'd be a challenge that they were sure to lose and have their faces sweep the floor. Wasn't this a blatant threat? Earlier, when they heard that Shi Lian ran away or was kidnapped, the communication array roared to life. It was, after all, a rare riot, and all cared deeply. Some martial guards were even ready to heed the call, prepared to give chase. However, with only 3 lines from Hua Cheng, all such passion disappeared. If Junwu gave command to send whoever to pursue, then it couldn't be helped. It'd be official business. But this was something that had just happened. Everything was still a mess, so naturally, no one wanted to bring trouble to themselves. No one wanted Hua Cheng to remember them. Thus, they all pretended that they weren't present. But their ears were attentive to the development of the situation, their hearts anxious and shaking. This crimson rain sought flower was overly fearless, to come all the way to the heavens just to kidnap, and the kidnapped was the laughingstock of the 3 realms. Was this some deeply rooted grudge, or what? Silence befell the communication array. Only Feng Xin continued to swear, and Hua Cheng removed his fingers after making his speech. "Don't mind them," he said to Xie "San Lang," Xie blurted, but Hua Cheng let go of his hand. "We're too close to the heavenly court. Let's hurry," Hua Cheng said. His voice was low, and his tone was hard to discern. Yet his letting go of Xie wrist was swift, almost as if shaken off. Xie was immediately reminded of the first time they had met and how he had evaded his touch. Xie froze on the spot. He originally wanted to ask Hua Cheng why he'd appear so suddenly. Although he didn't think deeply about it, he sort of felt that maybe he came to rescue him. So when he called out San Lang just now, he was a little happy. But with how Hua Cheng shook off his hand, Xie suddenly realized, why did he think Hua Cheng would come to rescue him? Never mind thinking whether Hua Cheng cared to follow his actions that closely. He'd only just escaped the ghost city after setting Paradise Manor on fire. It was more likely that Hua Cheng came knocking for paybacks or for revenge. Hua Cheng caught, imprisoned, and interrogated the Lord Earthmaster, who went undercover as a spy. That was the undeniable truth. But the fault naturally laid with the one who went undercover. Yet he snuck into the ghost city, burrowed all over Paradise Manor to find said person, and then set a fire. Even if, in the end, the reason Paradise Manor burnt the way it did was because Shi Xuan fanned the flames. The first kindle in the armory was started by him. Others might not even have thought of setting anything on fire, so no matter what, Xie needed to take responsibility. The two walked, one behind the other. The more Xie thought, the worse he felt, and the guiltier he became. "San Lang, I'm sorry," he apologized. Hua Cheng suddenly paused in his step. "Why are you apologizing?" Xie stopped too. "I went to the ghost city to investigate the missing Earthmaster. I didn't tell you the truth, yet you treated me with utmost hospitality. But then I burnt down your Paradise Manor. I feel really bad." Hua Cheng didn't say anything. Xie also knew that "I feel really bad" really didn't amount to much, and felt even more ashamed. He lightly cleared his throat. "But I reckon I'll be banished soon. After I descend, I'll for sure think of a way to repay you, to see if I could—" "Why do you have to repay me?" Hua Cheng interrupted. His tone was a little hard, as if he couldn't listen anymore, and he turned around in a fit. "Did you forget that my blade wounded your arm? I hurt you, not the other way around. Why do you have to repay me?" Xie never thought that his right arm was in pain, and even now he completely forgot that his right hand was injured. He paused, then said, My right arm is fine. It'll be better soon. Besides, it only became like this because I rushed forward to strike. So you're not to blame." Hua Cheng watched him intently, his left eye unusually bright. Xie suddenly noticed that he appeared to be shaking. After a moment, Xie realized that it wasn't Hua Cheng who was shaking, but the scimitar Erming on his waist. That silver scimitar hung upon the red robes was shaking non-stop. The eye, contoured by a silver line, was also trembling. If it was the eye of a child, then this child, at that moment in time, must be bawling with tears.